Today's theme is the role of spirituality in law, justice, and higher education through Sri Aurobindo's teachings. This topic is of utmost importance, most appropriate, and indispensable for the current situation. There are various reasons to it that can be given as a background and a context for this session, but some of them are the unprecedented crisis that we all are currently facing, the interdependence of things from the social, local to the national, global, and universal level, and the challenges we are facing in integrating all kinds of knowledges and practices from different domains, and also the convergence of values and knowledge across various disciplines of knowledge, and finally the role of India, which has a crucial role to play in shaping the future humanity, the future age, and all of us. As we know, in the last week, the Government of India announced the National Education Policy 2020, in which there are lots of adventurous things that are sought for from educationists, from teachers, from research scholars, from students, and everyone who is connected with education as a whole. But how do we do that? How are we going to bring the adventure that is being sought in the national education policy, or shaping the humanity and the future age through education, which is our utmost duty for all of us to undertake, and also to take India's role towards something new, something beautiful, and something very important for all of us. How do we do that? If we see the current educational paradigms so far that I have observed in my 20 years of teaching and research, they are largely on the lines of social, economic, political, cultural, scientific, technological, and so on. All these are relevant and important, and they all have played their respective roles. However, the education that is based only on social dimension or economic, scientific, technological dimensions alone will not be sufficient for us. We need to do something else. If we have to accept the challenge of creating a new future through education, if we have to accept the challenge of bringing India's contribution to the development of the whole of humanity and each and every one of us, we need to think of something else. Even the modern researches that are being undertaken by various universities across the world, like the interdisciplinary model, the cross-disciplinary model, the multidisciplinary model, and the UNESCO's transdisciplinary model, and so on, they all are struggling to converge the knowledge from the social, the economic, the scientific, the technological, the political, the cultural, and so on. How do we converge all these knowledges in order to bring benefit to the humanity as a whole, in which some of the core values which humanity has been seeking, like from the point of view of legal discipline, with which I am connected with last 2 decades, the idea of equality, the idea of justice, the idea of liberty, the idea of fraternity, or if you take education in general, the idea of inclusivity, the idea of sustainability, the idea of equity, whatever be the cherished values that we are going to take and apply for the betterment of humanity as a whole, it seems the current educational paradigms, methods, and models, the social, the economic, the cultural, the scientific, technological, and so on, they all have played their role and they all will be playing their role. But there is something else, there is something more needed to be introduced. Even in the field of research, other than the interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, and transdisciplinary, there is something else that needed to be brought in. It is at this juncture we need to understand that we need a new direction for our education in general and legal education in particular, because I am connected with legal education, in order to take and give humanity the best forms of life, peace, progress, and perfection. How do we do that? This is the biggest question that needed to be addressed. If we see the research models, whatever be the discipline, social sciences and humanities and arts on one side, science and technology on the other side, or the vocational courses or the professional courses on the other side, they all are struggling to arrive at a knowledge. They all are struggling to bring the convergence and synergy of all the knowledge together in one platform. There is only one method, there is only one methodology, or there is only one platform in which all these knowledges from different disciplines, from different research methodology and its approaches can be brought together. That is where I discovered and I realized the importance of spirituality in legal education. When I started doing this research on the role of spirituality in law and justice, I realized that it has its immense importance in the higher education as a whole, whatever be the nature of discipline. One might wonder why I am combining law, justice, and higher education, because people very often feel legal education is different from other forms of education. It is true from the point of view of knowledge, from the point of view of the application of the knowledge, they all have different domains where these knowledges are applied. But if you dig deeper into any aspect of knowledge, you will be finding the different domains of knowledge hidden inside that. To give a simple example, if you want to know why a particular crime is taking place, we may discover the economic conditions in which an offender was living. We may discover the psychological troubles or the psychological problems of the offender, or we can find out the cultural angle to it. We can find out the sociological angle to it. So you take any discipline, you take any issue of human life, the moment you want to find out the core truth of it in order to make that particular knowledge address and solve the problems of that particular domain, you cannot avoid getting into the deeper dimensions of knowledge, in which you will slowly start recognizing the importance of the convergence of knowledge from different disciplines. Whatever be the knowledge that you take to, whatever be the discipline and the research that you take to, the moment you start digging into it to find out the core reality of that knowledge, you realize the importance of the convergence of that knowledge. But all these convergences are already tried through interdisciplinary model, multidisciplinary model, cross-disciplinary model, and transdisciplinary model. But one important difficulty in these methods is that they all very well address the social externals. They all very well address the social conditions. A social view and an economic view, a legal view and a psychological view can all be brought. But even when they are brought together, the knowledge which we see it as converging in its application is not getting converged from the origin of it, because we have not explored the origin of this knowledge. We have not explored the source of this knowledge. It is said that being known, everything will be known. This means there is a source, there is a reality, there is a truth from which all dimensions of experience come out, which at the academic level, through research level, we explore through various subject disciplines and we try to understand. But in all these methods, we only deal with the externals and we don't go to the source of it. So, how do we go to the source of it? This is where the role of spirituality comes into the picture. Role of spirituality in law and justice and higher education through Sri Aurobindo's teachings is what I am concerned with. What I found from the writings of Sri Aurobindo, be it Human Cycle, Ideal of Human Unity, War and Self-Determination, or Tales of Prison Life, or Uttarpara Speech, some correspondences and evening talks and so on, we can find in various places Sri Aurobindo has always stressed on the core knowledge, stressed on the core dimension of experience which proceeds from the consciousness, the spirit of it. This is where I realized if we go to the core spirit of it, the core consciousness of it, that truth, that reality, from there, if we again explore the same knowledge from different domains, there is every possibility that we can connect all the knowledges from different disciplines. Let me explain. We need to understand what spirituality means here, because that is a very crucial definition that we need to consider, because spirituality as a whole, or spirituality as a popular understanding, a popular definition of it, it has taken many forms and different meanings. All can be put together in two categories. One is the spirituality in which one gets to know the truth of it and one lives there without having the impact of the same in the life. Maybe we can call it as the passive aspect of the spirituality. Second is the dynamic aspect of the spirituality, in which what we realize through spirituality, from spirituality, the supreme truth of it, we try to bring it in our daily life and apply it in our reasoning, in our emotional quotients, and so on, and then we bring a change. Sri Aurobindo explains in one place, spirituality means an awakening to a greater reality, a higher reality, a deeper reality, or the true reality which is inside us, other than the mind, emotion, sense, and body. Let me repeat again. Spirituality is an awakening to a greater reality, a higher reality or deeper reality, or true reality of us, other than the mind, emotion, sense, and body, which we normally identify as our personality, as what we are, as who we are. So spirituality is nothing but an awakening to that reality, which is different from these, the existing, the current reality of us, the current human nature of us. That particular higher reality, greater reality, true reality needs to be discovered. And that discovery is the awakening of it. So, to put it very simply, spirituality means awakening to a greater reality, higher reality, or true reality, or deeper reality, or even the inner reality, other than the external reality in which our mind, emotion, sense, and body are clothed. How do we get that awakening? Is the process of yoga, is the process of what is called the sadhana and so on. That I am not discussing it here, but we need to keep in mind that there is a greater reality other than the reality that we know of. That greater reality, true reality, inner reality, deeper reality is the starting point of the spiritual discovery. That greater reality or that spiritual reality also has various dimensions, various gradations, and so on. I am not getting into all those things. But what we need to keep in mind is that there is a reality other than the reality that we think we know. There is a reality other than the reality in which we feel that we feel. Similarly, in relation to sense and the body. It is possible by the yogic methodology and the process, by the spirit and the power of what is called the sadhana, to tap that potential, to tap that reality inside us. It is as good as putting a switch and then the electrical circuit switch go and the light which glows. It is simple like that. This is a reality which many people understand from the point of view of spirituality. But Sri Aurobindo's spirituality, which is a unique synthesis, a unique orientation which he has given to the humanity, is that he says that this reality is not only discoverable, but it can also be brought down. It can also be brought down and make it impact into our mind, make it impact our emotions, make it impact our sense, and make it impact our body. This means there are two realities inside us. One is the current reality, another is the higher reality, and the awakening of it is the spiritual reality, the awakening to the greater reality, and from there again bringing the impact of it in the same mind which we initially thought it is this reality which we know of, but we get to see that this same reality, the same mind, the same emotion, the same sense, the same body is having a higher mind, is having a deeper emotion, is having a greater sense, it is having a subtler body. So it means there are two bodies which are there, or two realities which are there. One is the outer reality with which we are currently occupied with, currently aware of, conscious of. The moment the spiritual awakening takes place, we get to have the connection with the greater reality and thereby bringing that connection back again into the same mind, into the same emotion, into the same sense, and into the same body. The current mind, emotion, sense, and body gets a new awakening. This is an unique orientation that Sri Aurobindo has given to the spirituality or the spiritual sadhana, slightly different or transformational in kind, because it again comes back into the human nature, which we left us in order to realize that greater reality. So, when we leave the current nature in order to realize that greater reality, and then if we don't come, we become passive there. When we come back again and impact the mind, emotion, sense, and body, we see a new change in the personality. We feel a new transformation in the personality. This is exactly where the unique contribution of Sri Aurobindo's teaching come to us, which can be impacted in the education, in the research, which are products of our own mind, emotion, sense, and body. So far, in the educational paradigms and the educational research methodologies around the world, across all disciplines, we have used the current mind, current emotion, current skill, and current body by researching on issues using these tools, the sensory data, by observing, by recording the data, analyzing it, giving an expression to it, and giving a meaning to it, giving a value to it. Those values are called the education, the knowledge of it. But Sri Aurobindo says, if we bring the greater mind, if we bring the greater emotion, if you bring the greater sense, if you bring the greater aspects of the dimensions of the body, and then connect it with the existing mind, connect it with the existing emotion, connect it with the existing sense and the body, the same mind, emotion, sense, and body starts observing things differently, and their sensory reach and data absorption becomes wide, becomes deep, and becomes vast. Which means our mind is no longer limited. Our emotions are no longer sentimental. Our senses are no longer with one or two skills. It becomes multi-dimensional in nature. And our body is no longer limited by its little energies. So when we have that awakening and bring it back into our own mind, emotion, sense, and body, the same mind, the same emotion, the same sense, and the body, and the five senses which are attached to it, they get reawakened, as a result of which you become different, a totally a new personality. As a result of which, the research that you do in education, whatever be the subject that you are interested in, will have a different dimension of it. Why this is very important? It's precisely because in the current paradigm of the educational methods and the research methodologies, we use the mind, we use the emotion, we use the sense, and we use the body. But how we use it by trial and error approach. As a result of which, we take lot of time to do a research. If we have the same mind which is supported by the higher mind, if you have the same emotion which is supported by a deeper emotion, if you have the same sense supported by extraordinary powers over the senses and their skills, if you have the same body but it is supported from behind with a greater body and a dynamic energy, we tend to research more, we tend to research fast, we tend to understand things fast, and we don't need to necessarily go through by the trial and error approach and the experimentation. One might wonder what is wrong in the trial and error approach. There is nothing wrong. We can do that. But it is a very delayed, cumbersome process, and we may make a lot of mistakes, as a result of which there may be certain injuries. In law, we call it injustice. There may be a lot of other problems that are coming to it, as a result of which the human seeking, the human fulfillment, the human well-being is delayed. If humanity wants to achieve what it has to achieve deep within the core reality from it, this is how it needs to be proceeded. Otherwise, we will be delaying it. Otherwise, we will be finding a lack of fulfillment in everything that we do. We may find certain fulfillment, it will not be a complete fulfillment. It will not be complete, it will not be perfect. In order to reach perfection, we need to find out the source of the mind which we are using, the source of the emotion which we are using, the source of the senses which we are using, and the source of the body which we are using. If you combine the existing human nature with that of the higher reality or the spiritual reality, the greater reality, the true reality, or the core personality, we become integrated, we become holistic, we become multi-dimensional in nature, as a result of which our capacity to do things, our capacity to bring solutions to life become different. This is exactly the academic disciplines in all universities. They are finding where is the breakthrough available. In my understanding, I have found out the breakthrough that is available for us is only through the gateway to spirituality. Now, let me explain more. I would like to explain by showing this simple slide. You just see awakening to greater reality is what I call spirituality. You see on the extreme left, greater reality is that, which is nothing but our higher, inner, deeper, true reality of our own, one's own. And this is exactly where the spiritual awakening takes place. If the spiritual awakening takes place, where the role of yoga and education comes here. As a result of this greater reality, as a result of this awakening, which is other than the mind, emotion, sense, body that we normally identify as our normal personality, we discover a new awareness. We discover a self. We discover a soul. We suddenly find, like the way we find emotion, like the way we find rationality, like the way we find sensory skills, like the way we find body having certain capabilities which are intangible, we find there is an intangible source, but nevertheless, it is a source, experienceable, it is a subjective evidence. You can call it self, you can call it soul, but there is a source inside us. Here, I would like to make a small mention. When we say inside us, or higher than us, or deeper to this, or greater to this, or truer to this, these are dimensions which don't exist from the point of view of consciousness. I'm using these terminologies: higher reality, inner reality, deeper reality, true reality, and all those things. But keep in mind, there is a reality, there is a core truth, call it spirit, call it self, call it soul. It is there inside us, which can be connected by the process of awakening. And that you will see that it is other than or greater than the current understanding, the current feeling, the current senses, the current body, the mind, emotion, sense, and the body, other than that. And this is much more powerful, this is much more capable than all those things. As a result of this discovery of this true reality inside us, the core personality inside us, we discover something, a potential which is transformational in kind, as a result of which it impacts our mind, it impacts our emotion, it impacts our sense, and it impacts our body. How do we bring that impact? Is a spiritual sadhana, it is a yogic methodology. I'm not going into that. Those are well known and those practices are available which we can take to. But what we need to understand is when this higher consciousness, this greater awareness, this greater reality, this soul, this spirit, this self impacts our mind, emotion, sense, and body, our awareness with which we have seen its range increases, its depth increases, its powers multiply. This is a fact. This is a reality. As a result of which it energizes the human nature. The human nature before the discovery of the spiritual reality, it undergoes fatigue. It undergoes in the mind some sense of a limitation. In the emotion, some sense of a limitation. In the sense also is some sense of a limitation. In the body also some sense of a limitation. But the moment the new energy is brought, the moment the individual is connected with the greater reality, you see a great door opening inside you, which in turn affects our thinking process, which in turn affects our feelings, which in turn affects our skills and actions slowly, which again contribute to whatever that you do in your research. This particular chart is not applicable only to legal education or a particular education. It is applicable to all kinds of education, all levels of education, all methodologies of education. Because we are dealing with the fundamental reality of the human consciousness, which is a product of this higher consciousness, which is a product of this core consciousness. We need to keep this in mind. So, this greater reality, which is a spiritual awakening by which we recognize that, we get a connection to it, we get a contact to it, as a result of which the new awareness that dawns inside us, which impacts our mind, emotion, sense, and body, as a result of which our thoughts, feelings, skills, and actions change. So, if we change, and if our emotions, skills, and body and mind change, our understanding of the reality changes, our understanding of the surroundings changes, circumstances, everything is perceived afresh and new. And that creates new experiences. Those new experiences creates new knowledge, and that becomes the source of it. Why this spiritual reality needs to be discovered? Because it is the core reality of all. Like how even in the research discipline, they have moved from interdisciplinary to the cross-disciplinary to the multidisciplinary to the transdisciplinary, which means they are moving from one disciplinary approach to another disciplinary approach, as a result of which the four disciplinary approaches that they have slowly integrated the knowledge to a great level. But the problem with these research methodologies is that they integrate the knowledge only at the external level, not at the inner level, not at the spiritual level, not at the consciousness level, because we have not yet explored the consciousness which is inside us. We have not yet tapped that reality. I used to say that once we tap this higher reality or greater reality, we can use the same interdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, multidisciplinary, and transdisciplinary in a much more effective way. We can use all the existing knowledge of all the subjects across all disciplines in a much more powerful way. And the impact of it is far reaching. How it is, I would like to explain through the next slide. Slide 2, please. Yes, I will give you the practical aspect of it. You see, awakening to greater reality, we call it as the spirituality. On one side, you can see the extreme left, parts of the being, the current nature, mind, emotion, sense, and body. I have put plus and minus, indicating our strengths and weaknesses which are there. But when the awakening takes place here, in one's own individual, you develop new skills. I call that as spiritual skills. What happens when the ordinary externalizing outward mind gets a contact with the spiritual reality? This mind, which was limited in nature, gets expanded because it is getting connected to its own truth of the mind. It is getting connected to its own greater mind. As a result of which, the mind here, the expansion takes place. What happens when expansion takes place? We tend to witness things, we tend to comprehend things. Like how we sit and observe 360-degree what is going on through our eyes. Similarly, with our inner consciousness, we not only see the tangible things, we can also see the intangible things. Not only with the limited vision with which the biological eyes can penetrate through, but it can go even beyond that. So when our mind gets expanded from the ordinary mind to the greater mind, our comprehension level increases. What it means to us to higher education and research, our knowledge level increases because our consciousness expands. There is a possibility for intuition. There is a possibility for new thinking. There is a possibility for new interpretation. And your writing skills will improve. So, your subject knowledge which you have collected from the sensory data of the externalizing human nature, that alone doesn't remain. You add another dimension of knowledge to it. You inject new knowledge to it. Your subject knowledge is not just a subject knowledge, but with the consciousness with which you are going to use the same terminology, same words, it will acquire a different dimension, it will acquire a different impact before the students or the research that you do and its benefit of it. What are the accomplishments that you will get? Of course, self-awareness, mindfulness, cause and effect relation. So mind, when the ordinary mind gets connected with the greater mind through that spiritual awakening, an expansion takes place. As a result of that expansion, witness takes place. As a result of which our comprehension increases. As a result of which discovery of new knowledge, intuition, thinking, interpretation, writing skills improve. And the same subject knowledge or any sensory data which you acquire, when you communicate that same sensory data, you are communicating that particular observation, that particular sensory data with a greater consciousness and a greater power to it, as a result of which the sensory data is no longer limited to the sense. This particular consciousness also enters the sense and it becomes big. I will show you how it is. As a result of which our self-awareness levels increase, what you call the mindfulness, as a result of which cause and effect relationship is understood. You get to realize very easily what is the cause and what is the effect, what is the thought and what is the context, which is very important. Now, second, what happens when awakening to the greater reality, the spirituality dawns inside us at the level of the mind, the impact it has on the emotion right now, depth of feelings, the strength. You are no longer sentimental, you are no longer uh, limited by certain feelings which are only on one or two aspects of life, or its range is limited. You can have a depth of feelings. In a depth of feeling is what in research uh, terminology we call the passion, the discipline, the commitment, the extension aspect of it. How do we get all these things? Passion cannot be intellectually taught. It is an energy. It is a discipline. It is a strength. It is a commitment to sustain that. You require enormous energy for that. That when you combine it with the knowledge, depth of feelings, when it is combined with the expansion, passion, discipline, commitment is combined with knowledge, intuition, thinking, interpretation. Your critical thinking increases. As a result of which, creative thinking skills also increase. Because you get to see things which ordinary senses cannot see. Creativity is nothing but something other than what we can visualize. Take the case of an artist who just seeing white paper, he draws something else because he visualizes something which is according to the sensory data, it may not be available, but he envisions something. So critical thinking and creative thinking develop manifold. Then at the level of the senses, harmony of skills. In the modern professional standards, they very often talk about multitasking or multidimensional capacities. How do we have that? Unless and until you are able to coordinate. In order to do the coordination, you require thinking, not only the thinking of the outward mind, not only thinking of the sensory mind, but also of the greater mind, not only of the emotion, but also of the depth of feeling, as a result of which you get two, three planes to play around. As a result of which your skills develop in a different way. As a result of which I have seen in many of the trainings that I do, in when you do capacity building training programs, you tend to see and you observe different types of people. They are sitting before you with different skills and different capacities. You need to address them at that level. You cannot just simply go on only one linear aspect of it. This depth of feelings, this expansion of the mind, if it is harmonized with all kinds of skills, the coordination capabilities, you are able to gracefully accept oneself and you are able to accept each and everyone. That kind of a harmonious understanding as well as the skills as well as the energy develops in you. And this is the best way to have the social outreach in training, which is what the UGC wants us to do. Capacity building is exactly that. I have given various words which one can develop it later because I have to explain much more. Now, at the level of the body, it is about the dynamic actions. Normally, the body is limited by the individuality. But when the body is connected to a greater body, when the body is connected to a greater power, your idea of individuality and collectivity changes. The interrelationship between the individuality and the collectivity develops. As a result of which, your output that you give in yourself and its impact on others in the circumstances, you can easily do many things. I used to say that these are the teaching skills that one should have. Currently, the teaching skills are nothing but what we see in the extreme left, the yellow column, the mind, the emotion, sense, and the body. But we have never explored the spiritual skills and applied those spiritual skills on the mind, emotion, sense, and the body, as a result of which we can see a heightened, empowered personality. We don't see that. We need to bring that. As a result of which our accomplishments also change. Can I have the next slide, please? I would like to bring here how this spirituality, which according to Sri Aurobindo's teaching, it is just not only to remain in the passive state. The moment you withdraw yourself from the external reality in order to reach to that greater reality, he says that time period is required to go there, but then you need to bring back again and then impact the mind, the emotions, sense, and the body. This is the unique contribution of Sri Aurobindo, and he has explained all these things in all his literature. Whatever be the nature of subject and the discipline that one belongs to, they will always find the best literature available in Sri Aurobindo's writings. How I have found out the connection of spirituality with law and justice and the higher education and the legal education in particular, I would like to explain it here. You just see the awakening to the greater reality, the spirituality, the higher reality, the true personality or the core personality. It brings awareness of one's own self, because you are not only the sensory personality, the external personality, the outward personality, you are also something much more. Your true personality is inside you, which is enveloping it. As a result of which, your awareness of the self comes into picture, which is what is exactly acting upon the sensory data. But since the awakening to that greater zone, that connection and contact has not yet taken place, we are not aware of that self, we are not aware of that consciousness. The moment we tap that greater reality, this higher reality, our awareness of the self increases. So we get the awareness of the self. What it means to us in law and what it means to us in justice and society and governance. In law, we say that a man or a human or a person is nothing but uh, the thought and the conduct. They both have to go together. If somebody thinks and doesn't know what his thoughts will result in a particular action, law has a different name for them. If someone cannot understand what is happening in his mind and emotion and sense and what it is going to impact in the society outside him or outside her, that becomes a legal problem. So in law, we call it as the animus and the actus. What you think, it should be connected with action. Or what you act, it should be preceded by thought. Because in law, we call human individual as not just only the individual in the society, but he is a social collective. The moment you step out of the house, the moment you turn this side or that side, something from your mind, something from your emotion, something from your sense and the body impacts the surrounding. If that impact is beneficial, it is good. But that impact, if it is going to be injurious to somebody, immediately law comes into picture. So the cause and effect is what is important. How can you understand the cause and effect? How can you understand the mind and its actions when you are not aware of your own self? Because this inner self, this higher self, this greater self, this true self is what is giving you an integration of the mind, the emotion, sense, and the body, and the corresponding planes of consciousness inside. So I used to say that those who commit crimes, they are the people who are disconnected in their consciousness. They are the people who are disconnected in their thinking, thinking or the emotion, between thinking and emotion, between emotion and skill, between emotion and body, or whatever be the permutations and combinations of it. It is precisely because of the disconnection that they are committing a crime. So how do we prevent a crime? I used to say it is the spiritual knowledge, the spiritual awakening that can bring coherence and harmony in the mind, emotion, and sense and the body, not only at the four levels, but also from within. Because these four levels can be combined only from inside. Because the true source of the mind, the emotion, sense, and the body, it is inside. It is the true reality. As it is said in the ancient tradition, that being known, everything is known, all is known. Similarly, that being known, that being stationed, that being positioned, that being connected into your own personality, you become all. You are no longer an individual, connected only with the mind or emotion or the body or the sense or a combination of any of these things. You become completely integrated individual. Not only integrated within you, but also integrated between two individuals or two or more individuals. So the spiritual consciousness gives awareness of the self, as a result of which you can monitor your thought and emotion, sense and contact, what they call behavior. Recently in psychotherapy, these are studied. How an action has come from thought, how an action has come from emotion, how an action has come from sense. This interlink they are trying to connect. But we have a greater scope. The spirituality has a greater scope and a very powerful scope, and most easiest and simplest and surest breakthrough it can give. Previous slide, please. Not this one, the third slide. Yes. Evolving consciousness. The next is when you become aware of your own self, you realize that there is an evolving consciousness. You know, evolving consciousness is nothing but liberty, which is according to Article 19, 20, 21, and 22. What does liberty mean? Liberty means there is a seeking to express, there is a seeking to enjoy. That is what we call it as liberty. I would like to express myself in the way in which I want. I am growing, my energies are there. That is the liberty. So true liberty comes from the evolving consciousness, which when you become aware, you realize it is the same evolving consciousness, or it is the same consciousness which is evolving in each and everyone, though they may not be aware of, as a result of which you can understand very well and not disturb others' liberties. Similarly, the awareness of the self and the evolving consciousness is what is going to bring the unifying oneness, because this greater reality is the one single one reality of all of us. What more you can get if you want to apply equality, Article 14, 15, 16, and 18. This equality is easily achievable from this higher position. I used to say anyone who has the sense of oneness, he will not injure anybody, obviously. Similarly, balancing harmonies, you have fundamental duties, Article 51A, and the directive principles of the state policy under Part 4. They all talk about your roles, they all talk about your social duties, they all tell you how you should behave in the society. And finally, the understanding aspect of it, which I call the love. The equivalent of it is justice, the remedies which are available in the court under Article 32, 136, 142, 226, and so on. Those who are law students or law graduates or law teachers or legal researchers, they will be able to understand how I am explaining all those things. So this is how the spiritual awakening inside us, which is bringing the awareness of the self and the consciousness which is continuously evolving, and the sense of oneness and the sense of harmony and the sense of understanding. All these equivalents are there in the Indian legal system or any legal system, or in these opening lines of the Indian Constitution, which says, we the people. People means the person. The person means one who can understand the cause and effect. If you cannot understand the cause and effect, the connection between your thought and action, you are having some amount of some kind of a disorderly development. And that gives the liberty, that gives the equality, that gives the fraternity, and that gives justice according to law. This has to be taught in legal education, is what I am trying to bring in. Slide 4, please. I would like to show also here 5 examples of how spirituality is also getting slowly integrated in legal system and judicial interpretations, but not very consciously. To give a quick example, there is one provision in the Indian Penal Code called section 309, which says the punishment will be given to those who attempts to commit suicide. So if somebody attempts to commit suicide, he is treated as a criminal. But then what happened in 2017? Indian Parliament brought out an interesting provision under the Mental Health Care Act. They said that if somebody is committing suicide, if somebody is having some kind of stress in his psychological personality and identity, the self identity, he cannot be punished. He should rather be cured. He should be given solace. So in law, we say state is like a parent. State should have compassionate approach to it. This particular provision under the Mental Health Care Act 2017, section 115, the two subsections, they say that if somebody is committing suicide, he must be having some kind of a problem. He should be given a treatment. How the treatment should be given, Mental Health Care Act gives detailed outlines. So this is nothing but a spiritual understanding of what a state should be, what legislators should be, what judicial interpretation should be. Similarly, section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, which recently decriminalized the same sexuality. No matter you like a particular person having this kind of a sexual orientation or that kind of a sexual orientation, you cannot discriminate in public space. You cannot discriminate him in the society. This is the sense of equality and this is the sense of fraternity, which the Supreme Court spoke about. Though they have not used the word spirituality, but they have used the word compassion, love, and so on. Then sustainable development, which came in the year 1972, they say that we need to sustain our development in such a way that the resources which we are using right now, it should be used in such a way that it should satisfy only our need, so that those who come after us, those who come behind us, those who come in the future, they should also be able to enjoy the resources in the same way in which we are enjoying. They say intergenerational equity, intra-generational equity, within one's own generation and between two generations. As a result of which, if you very carefully read the 1972 Sustainable Development Resolution of the United Nations, they talk about the timeless principle of human existence, the past, present, and future. Natural resources are not created by human nature, it is there. You only have to come to make use of it only to your need, not to your greed. So now the law is that they have brought a regulation called precaution. Before you touch any resource, which is a natural resource, you need to have a caution. What is that caution? There is that environment impact assessment. Guidelines are there. How we are going to make use of these resources. If you use these resources, what will be the depletion level? Whether it can be reignited into the natural resources or not, whether it is biodegradable or non-biodegradable. All that needs to be cleared right now. Only then it will be allowed. The human mind is made to think. The human mind is made to converge different points. The human mind is made to think that you are not the only individual who is going to live and enjoy. There are also people behind you. So the individual and the collectivity which is coming into picture. Similarly, the Prevention of the Cruelty to Animals Act 1960 and the recent Animal Welfare Board, like how we have societies registration acts in which all the human societies in different places they gather and make an act. Similarly, all animals and their welfare is also protected by a society. It's called Animal Welfare Board. Cruelty to animals is not permitted. Of course, it is not yet completely implemented in full phase. There are a lot of challenges to it, but what they call it as human nature when they live in the society, it is not that the human resources, the animal, the plantal kingdom is only for you. That is called anthropocentrism. That is being removed and it is being brought with what is called earth jurisprudence. We have to think of a planetary spirit, compassion to non-human beings, the value of oneness come into picture. Similarly, the Prevention of Corruption Act 1988. They talk about the tangible asset as well as the intangible assets. Whatever a public servant earns and whatever he has it as tangible or intangible asset, it should be proportionate to the income. It cannot be disproportionate. So what they say under Section 13 of the Prevention of Corruption Act, they say it should be proportionate. You can have only remuneration for the services that you are doing. You cannot take any extra remuneration. You cannot do anything, whether it is cash or kind. So your greed is being questioned. Your greed is being monitored. As a result of which, the single individual who is going to serve the public as a public servant, he has to be very careful of his actions and its impact in the society, the awareness of one's own self. So this is the role of spirituality. This is the role of spirituality in law, education, and justice. And Sri Aurobindo's teachings are very useful for that if we take to their readings, because he speaks about the spirituality which is life oriented. He speaks about the spirituality which is world embracing. He speaks about the spirituality which is not only peace oriented but also dynamic development oriented. He speaks not only about the problem solving, he also speaks about preventing a particular problem. And he speaks about not only of the individual development but also of the collective development. This unique dimension to spirituality which Sri Aurobindo has given, this particular understanding, this particular thinking, this particular range of ideas and the value systems which he has explained across all his writings will be very useful for researchers, scholars, teachers, educational institutions, students, whatever be the field of profession or nature of discipline. You can start, because he starts with the core and he tries to connect with the core personality, the true personality, with that of the mind, emotion, sense, and body, and he brings the individual and the collective together. This is what I wanted to share today with all of you about the role of spirituality in law, justice, and higher education through Sri Aurobindo's writings. If I can quickly tell what are the books that can be read, is that A System of National Education, a small book by Sri Aurobindo on what education means. Then The Ideal of Human Unity for those who are interested in socio-political thoughts. For those who are interested in the social angle of knowledge, Human Cycle, Ideal of Human Unity on political and legal thoughts, War and Self-Determination on international thoughts, and so on. And all other writings from Karma Yogin and Vande Mataram will be very useful for academics and research. So I stop here.